I've been using the M4 Pro MacBook Pro 14 as my main laptop for about 3 months now, and honestly, it's been used and abused every single day, ranging from schoolwork to heavy multitasking, and also doing a bit of gaming, and sometimes heavy gaming, and also extremely heavy video editing, and it's honestly gone through it all. And after 3 months of real world use, I've got a lot to say about it, the good and the bad, and a few handy tips and tricks I've picked up along the way. Before this, my main portable machine was the M1 MacBook Air, so I'll also touch on what it's been like going from such a thin laptop to going to something a bit heavier but way more powerful. What's absolutely clear after 3 months of daily use is that the M4 MacBook Pro 14 is an absolute tank when it comes to build quality. I pulled this thing out of my bag probably 1,000 times. And I've plugged in USB-C cables, chargers, SD cards, you name it, over and over again. And still, there's no visible wear, no scratches on the chassis, no fading around the ports, nothing. It honestly still looks brand new. Now, to be fair, I've always used a protective sleeve when moving around with it. But even then, compared to my previous laptop, the 14-inch Lenovo Legion Slim 5, which I used for around the same amount of time under the same conditions, the difference is huge. The Lenovo picked up scratches pretty quickly and the paint around the ports started to wear off. Meanwhile, the MacBook's coating and overall finish have held up incredibly well. It's just built differently. You can really tell that Apple uses premium materials for a stiff laptop and premium laptop that doesn't flex, doesn't creak, and the chassis just feels premium overall. As I said, before switching to the M4 Pro, my main Mac was the MacBook Air M1. And as you can see here side by side, the difference is pretty dramatic. The Air is noticeably thinner and lighter. In fact, the thickest point of the Air is about the same as the Pro when it's open. So yeah, the Pro is definitely a chunkier machine. When I pick up the Pro with one hand, I can feel that extra weight, but with the Air, I could easily grab it and move it from one desk to another. But with the Pro, it's heavier and you feel that pull when you lift it from one side. But here's the thing, I've actually gotten used to it pretty quickly, and there are clear upsides to the thicker design. The Pro has dual fans and it stays cooler, and of course it delivers way more performance. So yes, it's heavier and a bit bulkier, but it's not thick for no reason. You're trading a bit of portability for a lot more power, better thermals, and a sturdier overall build. And honestly, for the amount of performance this laptop offers, I'd still call it one of the most portable 14-inch power laptops you can get. I went with the base M4 Pro, so it's got a 12-core CPU, 16-core GPU, and 24GB of RAM and 512GB of storage. And honestly, this setup has handled everything I've thrown at it. For everyday use like schoolwork and multitasking, it's been super smooth. I can have around 30 tabs open, switch between them instantly, and it never slows down. I can have PDFs, streaming, and multiple websites, and it doesn't even flinch. Everything loads instantly and there's zero lag. Moving on to video editing, this thing is a beast. I edited my beginner's guide to macOS video on this laptop. It was a 12-minute 4K project packed with transitions, stabilizations, keyframes, and effects. And even with all that, it stayed smooth the entire time. Exporting that video took around 30 minutes, which might sound like a lot, but considering it was full of heavy effects and 4K 60fps footage, that's actually really impressive. So yeah, performance in video editing is top notch. In terms of gaming, macOS still doesn't support every game, but for the ones that do, it runs really well. Dota 2 runs great, Rust is playable if you lower the settings a bit to 1080p medium-high settings, and for anything else I just use GeForce Now, which honestly gives a smoother experience without the fans going crazy. Overall, the performance has been flawless for what I do, which is multitasking, video editing, and a bit of gaming. It just handles everything easily. The MacBook Pro 14 comes with a 14.2-inch liquid Retina XDR display. That's a mini LED panel with a 3K resolution. It also has ProMotion, which is 120Hz with variable refresh rate. And it can also reach an SDR brightness of 600 nits indoors, and outdoors the SDR brightness can go all the way up to 1000 nits. It also peaks at 1600 nits in HDR brightness. Using it every day, the first thing I noticed is just how premium it feels. The bezels are extremely thin, and since it's edge-to-edge glass, it looks like one solid sheet of glass. And coming from a glossy OLED laptop, I immediately appreciated the anti-reflective coating here. It's not a matte coating, but it really cuts down on the glare. And combine that with the 1000 nits of brightness and reflections are never a problem, even outdoors in direct sunlight. I also checked out the nano texture version in store, but personally I prefer the glossy panel. It just looks sharper and more vibrant, and you can always boost the brightness if you need to. When watching movies or editing videos, colors are vibrant yet very accurate, not oversaturated like some OLEDs, and blacks are deep thanks to the mini LED dimming zones. OLED still wins for absolute black levels, but this screen gets very close while staying much brighter overall without the risk of burn-in. Here you can see me showing a completely black video on YouTube just to check for any backlight bleed or blooming, and honestly, there was none detected. ProMotion at 120Hz makes everything feel super smooth. And True Tone with night shift is great for eye comfort when working long hours. I always use it when doing schoolwork or watching long movies. Overall, this display truly feels professional. It's incredibly bright, color accurate, sharp and immersive. The only screen that really tops it right now would be a tandem OLED panel like the one in the ProArt 16, and that says a lot. Next up is the keyboard, and my experience here has been really interesting. Coming from my previous Windows laptop, the 14-inch Lenovo Legion Slim 5, which had about 1.5 millimeters of key travel, switching to the MacBook's 1 millimeter of key travel felt a bit strange at first. The layout itself is fantastic, no complaints there, but at the beginning I sometimes felt like certain keys didn't fully register, just because the feedback is so shallow, or more so, that the key travel was so short. But after a few days of use, I actually started to prefer it. Typing requires less force, so it's easier on the hands, especially when writing long text or scripts. And even though the travel is short, the keys still feel crisp and clicky, not mushy at all. So yeah, it's definitely different from traditional keyboards with longer key travel, but once you get used to it, it's a really comfortable and satisfying typing experience. Next up is the trackpad, and this thing is just amazing. It's a glass haptic touchpad, not a traditional mechanical one like on my old Lenovo laptop, and the difference is instantly noticeable. I've used both haptic and mechanical trackpads before, and the one on the MacBook Pro is easily the best I've tried. The click just feels more realistic and more premium compared to the one on the MacBook Air. It's the same technology, but the feedback is sharper and more refined here. The surface itself is also super smooth. Your fingers glide effortlessly across it, and because it's haptic, you can click anywhere on the trackpad. But technically, it doesn't always register clicks at the very edges, but it's large enough that you'll never notice that in normal use. Now let's talk about the speakers, because honestly, they blew me away. The MacBook Pro 14 has a high-fidelity 6-speaker sound system with force-canceling woofers. And for a 14-inch laptop, these are by far the best speakers I've ever heard, and it's not even close. And just to give you an idea of how the speakers sound, here's a quick speaker test. The sound is super clear and full, whether I'm watching movies, editing videos, or just listening to music. It gets loud enough that I rarely need to turn on the volume all the way up. And for a laptop of this size, the audio experience is just unmatched. So, how does a laptop this thin and light actually handle heat and fan noise? Well, it really depends on what you're doing. During everyday tasks like web browsing, watching movies, or working on school projects, the laptop stays completely cool. Temperatures usually sit between 35 or 45 degrees, and the fans don't even turn on. And when I move to light or medium video editing, like 4K footage with a few effects, it can climb to around 50 to 60 degrees, which is still perfectly fine. The laptop never feels hot to the touch. Things only start to get warm during heavy workloads, like exporting a long 4K video with multiple transitions and stabilizers. In those cases, temperatures can reach around 75 to 85 degrees, and that's when the fans kick in. Now during gaming, that's when it really pushes the limits. In Valheim, for example, with max settings, I saw CPU and GPU temps spike up to about 105 degrees, which is very high, but that's also an extreme use case because you don't usually max out the settings on a MacBook. And as long as the temperatures doesn't go over 90 degrees, the chassis never feels hot. So as long as you stay in those temperatures or under 90 degrees, you don't have to worry. As for the fans, I've been really impressed. They almost never turn on during normal use. And even under load, the sound is smooth, no high-pitched noise, no whine. I'm going to include a short fan noise test using max fan control, starting at 2500 RPM, then going to 5000, and then finally maxing out the fans at around 7800 RPM. Overall, for a laptop this thin and powerful, the thermals and the fan noise are handled extremely well. Now let's talk about battery life, and honestly, this is the best battery life I've ever had on a laptop. It's just been amazing. The battery life has held up incredibly well, no matter what I've thrown at it. I did a test where I just let the laptop play the 7 Deadly Sins on Netflix until it died. It was set to automatic mode with the screen at around 300 nits and nothing else running in the background. It lasted an incredible 17 hours and 23 minutes straight, which is insane for a laptop this powerful. Then I tested it again with a more mixed workload, some medium demand video editing, multitasking, and a few background apps. Even then, I got about 9 hours and 30 minutes of use. So no matter what I do, the battery life easily lasts me through a full day. I forgot to tell you about the port selection in the beginning, so I'll go through it now. So, after using the M4 Pro for 3 months, I found a few must-have apps that make the experience even better. First up is iStat Menu 7. It lets you monitor your CPU and GPU temperatures, plus tons of other system stats right from the menu bar. Then there's Max Fan Control, which lets you manually adjust your fan speed to keep temperatures lower when things heat up. Next up is Cleaner One, a super simple tool to remove junk files and keep your Mac running smoothly. OBS Studio is another essential. Since macOS built-in screen recorder can't do 16:9 or change the resolution, OBS gives you full control for clean, professional-looking recordings. And finally, GeForce Now, easily the best way to play any games that aren't supported on macOS. Now, I've covered all of these in more detail on my channel, but trust me, you'll end up using at least one of them every day. So, should you buy the M4 Pro MacBook Pro 14 in 2025? Well, it's not a cheap laptop, and with the base M5 chip already out and the M5 Pro and M5 Max expected sometime in the near future, it's a fair question. If I didn't already have a laptop and needed one right now, I would still buy the M4 Pro, because honestly, for 99% of people, it's more than powerful enough. But if your current laptop still gets the job done and you can wait a few months, I'd say it's worth waiting to see what the M5 Pro brings. And that wraps up my long-term review of the M4 Pro MacBook Pro 14. If you found this video helpful or learned something new, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out as a small channel trying to grow. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.